Hello, I am Zach Kazan. I'm an editor at Worn and Wound, and we are here at Windup, San Francisco, 2022 edition, our first time back in San Francisco since the onset of the pandemic in 2020. It's great to be back here. I'm joined by Don Cochran, who's the founder, refounder, as he likes to say, of Vertex watches. Don, welcome to Windup San Francisco.
Thank you very much for having us.
So it's great to have you and Vertex here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the brand and its history and what brings you to Windup this year?
Well, I say refounder because it was founded by my great-grandfather in 1912 in England, in Hampton Garden, which is a sort of jewellery district of London. It's most famous for now making watches for the British military, specifically being one of the Dirty Dozen watchmakers from World War II. Other Dirty Dozen watchmakers are Omega, Jaeger, LeCoultre, IWC, Longines, so it's quite a nice club
nice
to
company
be part
to be
of.
in, yeah.
After the war, they focused mainly on civilian watches. And then in 1972, the lease for our factory came up and my grandfather wanted to retire, and so the company stopped trading at that point. About 7 years ago, my grandmother passed away. She was 99 and a half, and she was a very important part of my life. And I just thought it would be amazing, as a cathartic thing really, to bring the watch company back that her father started. And one thing led to another, and now it's taken over my life. Really?
Watches have a tendency to do that.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. There are so many brands, obviously, that have resurfaced, over the past, 10 or so years. We've seen this huge popularity in watches, just resurging popularity. But it's really nice that you have a family connection to this brand.
Yeah.
That relaunch. So many brands relaunch and they seem almost arbitrarily, relaunched. But obviously, this is a family business for you.
Yeah.
It seems like that's really important.
Yeah, no, for me, it was the cathartic element of the company was much more important than the commercial element of the company.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was really important that we had a solid story, a solid narrative that we could tell. And I think the fact we've put watches on the wrists of soldiers that fought their way out the beaches of Normandy and then went on to liberate Europe and Asia is a fairly strong story.
Yeah.
Also, perversely, because we're the only British member of the Dirty Dozen, we can talk about it much more openly than Swiss watch manufacturers can talk about it, because they also obviously made watches for the baddies, and so it's complicated for them to have an honest narrative around that stuff.
Yeah, there's kind of this almost like unspoken kind of history of watchmakers making watches for the other side. So it's interesting to get your perspective on that. So we're looking at some of the watches that you brought with us. Obviously, these watches, they seem to pay homage to the past.
Yeah.
They're definitely connected to an earlier era, but some modern touches. Why don't you take us through some of the watches?
Yeah, it's important that they work, and it's important that they're not pure, copies of historical pieces, that we move things forward. That's always been the way. The ones I've got on the table here today, there's one that is very much based on a historical piece. This is a monopusher chronograph that was basically designed for the British Army at the end of the Second World War as an ordnance disposal engineer's watch. And I love monopushers. Monopushers are super popular right now.
There's something fun about just like pushing a button, it's just over and over again.
It's a very kind of honest way of, start, stop, reset, very simple.
Yeah.
A lot of military equipment is very simple. It's just designed to do its job. When I brought out this watch, monopushers weren't so popular as they are right now. In the last 2 years, everyone seems to have a monopusher. Mm-hmm. So I take full credit for that.
Yes, as you should.
Very important. Asymmetric case, which is something else I really love. Solita SW500 movement. This is actually a manual wind watch, and they made this movement for us, which is really lovely as well. And then the other watch I have with you, in fact, there's two versions of the other watch, and three if you count the one on my wrist, is our new launch, which is the dive watch, the M60 Aqualion. The dial is sort of based on a watch we made in the 60s, a dive watch we made in the 60s, but again modernized with molded superluminova. So all our watches have this molded superluminova dial, which makes it very clear to read, but it also makes it incredibly luminous, and that's fun. It's a very technical dive watch. When I wanted to do it, I'm a big fan of the water, so I wanted it to be the best it could be. So it's waterproof to 600 meters, 2,000 feet. It's Swiss ISO rated, so it's actually overpressure tested to 750 meters. It's heated and cooled, drop tested, and all sorts of things, and not sample tested. Every single watch is tested, which is part of the ISO homologation.
Yep.
The cost certified movement. It's a matte ceramic bezel, and also quick release lugs on the bracelet, so you can swap the bracelet over. The little motif on the back, I don't know if you can see it there, is the Aqualion, which was actually the brand image for my great-grandfather's first watch company, which was called Dreadnought.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't actually use the Dreadnought name anymore because another watch company owns it, but we still had the trademark for the logo, so that became an important element of the watch. We're just bringing out next week a DLC version of the watch, which is this one here, which I think works
that's great.
really, really beautifully.
So that's the newest
Yeah.
release, kind of hot off the presses.
So that hasn't actually gone on the website yet, but it will go on the website shortly. I love DLC, and I think it works brilliantly, especially with a matte bezel and the rubber strap. It's a good-looking thing.
The matte ceramic bezel, I think, is a kind of an underused feature in modern watches, but it has such a cool look to it that you just can't get with like a shiny, polished ceramic. And obviously the ceramic is kind of a kind of more forward-thinking sort of like techie, element to the watch.
Yeah.
Kind of makes
The other thing about the watch, the bezel design, this knurling patination, is taken from the rear sight adjuster of the British Bren gun, which is a very famous light machine gun from the Second World War. I happen to have one at home, and I was sitting there looking at it one day and just thought, well, that would make a really good bezel.
Yeah.
One thing led to another. So now we have the Bren bezel, which is a really, as you can feel, it's very tactile, it's very easy to grip and turn, which is, again, a very military thing. It's how things were designed.
Yeah.
And
very satisfying.
Yeah. It kind of echoes nicely into the future. We're all about stories in the end, and it's a lovely story.
Yeah. So, can you tease us anything coming? I know you're obviously just putting out the new Aqualion, but what's to come from Vertex?
Yeah, teach you about things that. So, we launched with what's called the M100, which was very much a homage to the Dirty Dozen watch. We'll be bringing out an automatic version of that watch in June this year, and then we're working on a watch specifically for the British military at the moment as a mission watch. But that's all I can say about that.
So is that a watch that you're working in partnership with them? That's
so it's
great.
being developed alongside
That's wonderful.
some units in the British military.
That's great. And what has your wind-up experience been like? So we're on day one of
I've almost lost my voice already, and I think we're only 3 hours in.
Yeah, no, it gets worse.
So I'm just waiting till I can get to the bar. I'm just kind of
We'll go there
rationing
next.
my bar presence. I'm thinking maybe if I get to 4, I can have a beer then.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be fine. But it's amazing. It's amazing turnout. It's wonderful to be in San Francisco.
Yeah.
America's an amazingly popular market for Vertex. Probably over half of our watches go to the US now. So it's a great excuse for us to come over here and meet some of our customers, hopefully meet some future customers. You'll notice there's a big British contingency here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here, Don. The watches are fantastic. Every time I go check you out at your booth, there's people looking at them, and so that's a good sign. So thanks very much for coming on and joining us.
Cool. All right.